This mic out of the way, should be good to go and commence generic YouTube intro. What's up guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. I am Easton Bennett. If you don't know me already, I like to call myself a filmmaker, I guess you could say. So I make videos about pretty much anything you want or would need or anyone else wants or needs or what I want and what I need. And today we are going to be talking about something that is more based towards you guys. Now I know a majority of my audience are beginners when it comes to photography and videography. I know a couple of you out there know exactly what you're doing, and this video might not be for you, but I asked on Instagram a few days ago what is a topic or what are a few topics that you guys would want me to cover in one of these videos, and a lot of you mentioned that you would want some camera basics, some starting tips on how you can get into this kind of thing and how you can get into photography and videography and what all the buttons mean and what all the menus mean, and that's what we're going to do today. So our topic of conversation for the next, how long are these videos? So our topic of conversation for the next maximum 10 minutes is going to be on camera basics. We're going to be talking about three things, and those three things are shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. Now a lot of you might not know what those things are, but we're gonna break it down super simple and easy in layman's terms so you guys know what the we're talking about. So the analogy we're gonna use for these three settings is taking a shower. Now you can picture each one of these settings, shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, as water, shampoo, and body wash. Now stick with me here. I know it might seem a little bit weird, but I'm gonna explain. So when you get in the shower, the first thing you do is you get wet and you have water, right? Next thing you do is you either have body wash or you have shampoo. You wash with that. Once you're done, you do body wash and you're done, right? So that's the full package. Now imagine you went in the shower, but you didn't use any water. You just put shampoo in your hair, and once you were done scrubbing the shampoo in your hair, you got out. That will be an example of only using shutter speed. It works, maybe not very well. Actually, I don't know if it works. But you're not gonna get the full experience if you don't use water to wash it out and you don't use body wash to clean the rest of your body. So now if we take the shampoo and we add water into the equation, let's just say that's the aperture, that's when the shower gets a little bit better. So now you have some water to wash out the shampoo, and those two go hand in hand to make the shower experience better. Now this is where the third part comes in, where shampoo and water will give you a great shower, but if you add body wash, then you are fully clean and you get the full shower experience out of all three of these different options. Now you can look at that the same way you look at cameras. Shutter speed, aperture, and ISO work together in a little triangle pyramid thing, and they work hand in hand to make your photos and your videos the best experience and get the most out of them that you possibly can. So now that you understand that you need each different component to get the best experience out of your camera, we can go into breaking down each one of those settings. The first thing we're going to talk about is the shutter speed. Now I'm going to talk about these in layman's terms so hopefully you can understand. So you can picture the shutter speed as a trap door that opens and closes in front of your sensor, allowing the image that's in front of that trapdoor to be shown. Now this is where shutter speeds come into play. If you have a fast shutter speed like 1/250, the shutter speed is going to open and close very quickly. But if you have a slow shutter speed, the trapdoor is going to open and stay open longer than it would if your shutter speed was higher. So this is where motion blur comes into play and how you can get those super crisp images and those videos that look cinematic and have the proper motion blur. Take this for example. If you have someone running like this and their arms are moving very fast, you're not going to be able to capture much motion blur if that shutter speed is not open very long, because the sensor doesn't have time to look at the movement and capture that blur, right? So if it's only open for say 1 second, you only get this much movement because it closes so fast. But if you have a lower shutter speed, it's open for longer, and then you can see this much movement. Does that make sense? So the longer that trapdoor is open, the more movement is going to be inside of your frame. So you can think about shutter speed as how long you're going to open that trapdoor for the sensor to see the image and how much motion blur you're going to see in your picture. Now let's talk about setting number 2, and that's the aperture. Now the one thing I think about when I hear aperture is background blurriness. So we've all seen those beautiful, gorgeous pictures where the background is super blurred out and dreamy and wonderful and smooth and buttery and cook on 450 and hot and warm. So having a low aperture like f2.8 or f2 or f1.8 or even f1.2, they get super low. Having those low numbers blurs out the background more and more. Now, if your aperture is higher, like a 7 or a 9 or an 11 or even a 14, there's going to be so much of the picture in focus and you won't get that blurry background and have that subject pop out from the background. So aperture is mainly how much blurriness you are getting in that background and how much of your picture is in focus. Now, the lower you go with that aperture and the more you blur that background, the more light is being let in, because the aperture are actually this little circle disc in front of the lens that closes like this and opens wide up, right? So it goes in and out, and the lower you bring that aperture, the wider that circle gets, and the higher you bring that aperture, the lower it gets, which automatically regulates how much light is coming in. A lot of light can't come through a hole this small, but more light can come through a hole this big. Now, the thing about aperture is the lower you go with the more light, you're gonna have to compensate for that extra light by moving your shutter speed a little bit faster. So with more light being let in through the aperture, you're gonna have to close that sensor a lot quicker so it cuts out some of the light coming in, which makes your image a bit darker. So those two really coincide with each other on how to expose your image and also the correct motion blur and background blurriness. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about is the ISO or ISO, however you want to say it. And the easy way to explain ISO is that it is fake light or artificial light that the camera produces. So this is mainly used in really low light situations or when you're shooting outside at nighttime or anytime you don't have a ton of light to work with to light your images. You can crank that ISO and it'll add a ton of fake light into your images. The one problem about ISO is the higher you go, the more grain is going to be added to your images and the quality is going to look worse and worse the higher you crank that ISO. So one rule of thumb that I have for the ISO is I try to keep it at 800 max. Obviously there are times that I have to go to 1200 or 2000 or sometimes even 3200, but those are extreme scenarios. Usually what I do is try to keep that under 800, reduce the amount of noise that's coming into the picture, and change the exposure based on my shutter speed and aperture rather than focusing on artificial and fake light that the camera is producing. So those are the three settings that intertwine with each other and put together an image. I can't give you exact numbers on what should be set when and how to work with them, but over time with a lot of practice and working with these settings, you'll know what you want. So when you have a low aperture and you want that blurry background, you're gonna have to crank that shutter a little bit higher so you can compensate for the light. So hopefully this made sense. I think it made sense. It made sense in my head, but there's a lot going on with these three settings and you have to work with them to understand what you like and what you don't like. The three things I want you to take away from this video are the shutter speed is that trap door that opens and closes, and that lets you decide how much of the picture you want your sensor to see by how long you're leaving that trap door open. The aperture is the blurriness of your background. So the lower you go, f1.2, f1.4, it's gonna be more blurry. And the higher you go, f9, f11, f14, the more is gonna be in focus in that picture or that video. And the last one, ISO, is artificial light or fake light. So if you're in a dark area or you don't have much lighting to work with, you can crank that up a bit. It'll give you some fake light for your sensor to be able to see in the dark a little bit better, but be wary that it does introduce some noise and some grain, and that is not always appealing. So hopefully that worked. It was kind of all over the map. If you have questions about it, I'd love to answer that. I tried to explain it to the best of my abilities. Hopefully the shower analogy worked a little bit for you to explain how they work in a little triangle, a little trifecta, and hopefully you took something away from this video. If you're looking to get into photography and videography, those are the basic three settings for shooting on manual, whether that be video or photo. So mess around with it, see what you like, see what you don't like, see what works, see what doesn't, and hopefully this helped you. If you like this video, hit that like button. If you want to see more of these videos, there's a little red box in the bottom. Hit it, find a way to hit it, kick it, run it over, punch it, I don't care. Do whatever you want because I'm not your mom, but most of the time I've been saying that and not very many people have been subscribing. So maybe I'm just going to tell you that I'm your mom this week and that you should subscribe because it would mean a lot to me. And it's Thanksgiving, the time of giving. Give me the satisfaction of seeing you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Peace out.
Enchanté.